Getting your day started when you're barely awake takes effort. While we can't brush your teeth for you or pick out a shirt or get your kids to school, we can help you get ready with stories that help you understand the world you're about to step into while you're wearing that shirt. You know, that one, the one with the stripes. Ease into your day with Morning Edition. Weekday mornings from 5 to 9 here on KCUR 89.3. I really like that shirt. Does it come in extra husky?
Tonight, a chance of flurries, and that chance for snow continues tomorrow. Otherwise, partly sunny tomorrow, a high near 31.
I'm Steve Kraske, and this is a rebroadcast of KCUR's Up to Date. Being unhoused in the winter in Kansas City can be deadly. Two people who were previously homeless share their experience living on the streets during the cold months. Then Victor Diaz is a Park University grad student who's participating in a competition that's all about making the classical music world more diverse and inclusive. We'll speak with them. Later, Great Jobs KC is working to remove barriers preventing low-income people from getting high-paying jobs. We'll find out how the program is investing in the future of Kansas City's workforce. We'll get you up to date after the news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. The Houthis in Yemen say their attacks on cargo ships in the Red Sea are in response to Israel's war in Gaza, where health officials say more than 1% of the population has now been killed in wide-scale Israeli bombardments. The U.S. has intercepted many of the Houthi rockets and has hit sites in Yemen. As NPR's Gulf Arab states say the way to end Houthi attacks is to end the war in Gaza.
Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed Al Thani told the World Economic Forum in Switzerland that his country's natural gas shipments to Europe through the Red Sea have been impacted by the Houthi attacks, but he says the solution lies in Gaza.
Otherwise, if we are just focusing on the symptoms and not treating the real issue, it will be temporary.
Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan, whose country has been at war with the Houthis, had this to say at the forum.
We need to focus on the war in Gaza because of its impact on the Palestinians first, but on regional security in general and on the risks that it poses for further escalation.
Israel says it will continue its war until Hamas, which attacked Israel on October 7th, is eradicated. Aya Batrawi, NPR News.
The state court in Maine has sent back the Secretary of State's decision to remove Donald Trump from Maine's presidential primary ballot based on a reading of a constitutional provision that bars insurrectionists from holding public office. The court says it is waiting on the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in on a case in Colorado. The Supreme Court has already said it will hear the Colorado case, which has barred Trump from that state's primary ballot on February 8th. Colorado case cites the same provision of the 14th Amendment. The state of Texas is refusing to comply with a demand by Homeland Security to allow the U.S. Border Patrol into a city park in Eagle Pass along the Rio Grande. It was commandeered by the Texas Military Department. Texas Public Radio's Joey Palacios says Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has responded with a scathing and defiant letter.
In his letter to DHS, General Ken Paxton said he would not comply, adding Texas will, quote, continue utilizing its constitutional authority to defend her territory, end quote. He accuses the federal government of abandoning the field of immigration enforcement and claims Texas had installed gates to allow Border Patrol access to Shelby Park in life-saving emergencies. This all follows the recent drowning of a mother and two children while crossing into the Rio Grande, with Homeland Security placing much of the blame on Texas for not allowing Border Patrol into the park. Paxton blamed Homeland Security for their deaths and denied Border Patrol was refused access based on a medical emergency. I'm Joey Palacios in San Antonio.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is defending the Biden administration's economic platform, contending it vindicates Democrats' big-picture decisions. It includes a $1.9 trillion package of economic incentives passed in 2021, primarily in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Stocks fell on Wall Street for a second straight session. The Dow dropped 90. NASDAQ was down 88 points. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning and welcome to Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. I'm Steve Kraske. No one in this part of the country has any doubt in their minds about how cold it's been lately. But what if you had to live outdoors in conditions like this? What if you were homeless? We'll meet a pair of folks who have endured Kansas City's harsh winters in a way most of us haven't in just a few minutes. Later, we'll meet Victor Diaz. He's a Park University grad student who's competing in this year's prestigious Sphinx competition in Detroit. It's aimed at encouraging more diversity in classical music. And we'll also find out more about a program called Great Jobs KC that provides access to tuition-free job training programs in high-demand career fields. But first up, let's get a rundown of the day's area news headlines with KCUR's Carlos Moreno. Carlos, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Steve.
We'll be talking to two people momentarily who will give us a real-world perspective of what it's like to endure extreme cold temperatures. But I understand we got a report from hospitals on how this weather has been affecting people here physically.
Yeah, as you would expect, freezing temperatures are sending more people to Kansas City hospitals with frostbite and hypothermia. KCR's Jody Fortino looked into it and prepared this report.
At St. Luke's Hospital of Kansas City, the emergency department has seen 14 people for cold-related injuries since Friday morning. Dr. Aaron Kous is medical director of the hospital's emergency department. He says to bundle up to go outside.
Whether it's keeping their hands and feet covered, keeping their face and exposed body parts covered to help prevent them from getting hypothermic or frostbitten.
Nearly 60 patients have gone to the emergency department at the University of Kansas Health System in the past week for weather-related problems. For KCUR 89.3, I'm Jody Fortino.
Federal law doesn't allow people to carry firearms onto aircraft. They're supposed to be properly checked and packed with baggage, but that doesn't always seem to happen, and it seems like Missouri travelers are especially bad at following the rules.
Yeah, the number of guns discovered at Missouri airports last year was double the national rate. KCR Sam Zeff has more on this latest TSA report.
TSA says while the rate of guns detected at airports in Missouri was much higher than the national average, the total number of guns was slightly down. At KCI, 89 guns were discovered at checkpoints last year. In 2022, at the old terminal buildings, that number was 92. Across the country last year, gun discoveries were up 3% from 2022, with more than 6,700 guns detected. When agents find a gun, TSA turns over the traveler to local police who may or may not charge them. Passengers can be fined civilly by the TSA up to $15,000. For KCUR 89.3, I'm Sam Zeff.
And Carlos, a relatively new way to fight crime is being criticized by some in Kansas City, Kansas.
Yeah, KCR's Lawrence Brooks IV has been looking into a public safety program the KCK police recently rolled out. It gives police direct access to private security cameras. It's raising concerns from a Kansas civil rights group. A Kansas civil rights group. Here's Lawrence.
The Connect KCK program lets residents and businesses in Kansas City, Kansas register security cameras and doorbells so KCK police can request footage. It includes the option to give police direct access to the video feed in case of nearby emergencies. But Micah Kubik, who leads the American Civil Liberties Unions of Kansas, has major privacy concerns.
There are lots of examples of surveillance technology being used in ways that really undermine the rights of individual people.
The ACLU of Northern California sued San Francisco in 2020 after police there used a network of private cameras without permission to surveil protesters. For KCUR 89.3, I'm Lawrence Brooks IV.
And with your morning news roundup, that's KCUR's Carlos Moreno. Carlos, thank you.
You're welcome, Steve.
This is Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. I'm Steve Kraske. The Kansas City region was blanketed with 4 to 6 inches of snow before taking a deep dive into dangerous below-zero temperatures in recent days. Living unhoused during our current conditions, or even through a mild Midwest winter, can mean life or death without proper care and shelter. Today we'll hear from two previously homeless individuals about their experiences with street homelessness and shelters during the winter in Kansas City. With me now is Monique Lichman. She's an intern at Relentless Pursuit, Outreach, and Recovery and was homeless for about 4 years. Monique, thanks for coming in. So good to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And Jeffrey Duncan is also with us. He's an employee with Restart Incorporated. He experienced homelessness from 2019 to last year. Jeffrey, good to have you too. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, Monique, let me start with you. How did you wind up homeless? Can I ask?
I was in a domestic violence situation. Yeah.
Which is the worst way to become homeless, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you turn straight to the street, or did you homeless shelter, or what did you do?
I wasn't familiar with the homeless system in Kansas City, Missouri, or generally the area. So I just went straight to the street.
What was that like for you when you first ventured out there?
Scary.
I bet.
Incredibly.
Scary because why?
Of the unknown and not being familiar with where to get meals and blankets, things that I needed to survive.
How did you navigate those first few days out there?
With prayer.
Yeah. Did other homeless folks sort of give you a hand and sort of give you a rundown of how things work?
No, I was in active addiction at the time. So I flocked to those people.
Yeah. So it was, I imagine the first few days were pretty rough.
They were very rough.
Yeah. You told our producer that you walked and prayed. Did you feel like that was your only option?
At the time, yes.
Yeah. Roughly how long did you spend unhoused and living out there on the street?
Around 4 years.
About 4 years. That's a long time.
It is.
It became a way of life.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah. Did it ever get to a point where it sort of worked for you?
Yes. Yeah. I'd adapted to it.
Yeah. Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, I became familiar with the resources, Uplift, and I'd been to Restart before, hospitals, shower houses, things that I could utilize.
Tell me a little more about spending some winters outside. Can you describe that experience on the street, and were you able to gather supplies to keep?
The first winter was awful, and I was not able to receive any help from fellow addicts and from resources. I wasn't, my trauma was very extensive. So people weren't familiar with that, and they didn't know how to handle it, I think.
Yeah. But at some point you began to figure things out, and I'm guessing you got a great sleeping bag and maybe got a tent, or tell me about that.
A few of them. Yeah. I learned how to camp. I think I'm a professional camper now.
Really?
I learned how I put up a tent. I learned how to make coals out of the wood. When they burnt down, we'd put them in Folgers cans or coffee cans, whatever was available that wouldn't melt or burn. And we put them on stones inside of the tent.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What difference did that make?
A lot, but you had to go back in the cold and, keep redoing these things. And it was dangerous to sleep like that because essentially a fire could happen. I'd burned down a few tents.
Yeah. Can you remember a night that was so cold and bitter and you just wondered if you were ever going to be able to get through it?
I did. I was walking in a snowstorm and around the crossroads area, and I had no blanket. I don't believe I had a warm coat. I'm not quite sure what kind of clothing I had on. And I actually ended up finding a blanket in the trees that was stashed in the trees there. It was a down comforter.
And that proved to be a lifesaver.
A lifesaver, yeah, for sure.
Kind of a gift out of nowhere.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Did you know, how cold did it get on any given night when you were out? Do you remember, the worst night, the coldest night you ever had to endure?
There were several, but one of the worst nights, I was standing on the side of Hope City, and I didn't have shoes on. April, but it was very cold, and I don't believe I had a jacket, and I didn't know about the services there. I didn't know I could go in and take a shower or eat lunch. I just stood there. I didn't even know how to ask for help.
How did you figure it out then? Did somebody come out and get you?
No, not that time. About a year later, I figured out what their services were.
Yeah. So if somebody asked you, what is the key to surviving a winter in Kansas City as a homeless person, how would you answer it?
The cold weather shelters.
Yeah. How did you feel in those places?
Again, I was still in my addiction. So, and I knew people. I gained some friendships, but I felt safe. I did feel safe.
Yeah. Okay. Let me bring in Jeffrey Dungan into our conversation, who also was formerly homeless. And can I ask, Jeffrey, how did you find yourself to be unhoused? How did that happen for you?
About up until 2019, I was living with family in an apartment. And I had a part-time job, and my mom had Social Security. And it was at the extent where I was helping out with the rent, but she was taking on most of the, I guess you could call it the burden.
Mm-hmm.
And then due to certain medical issues catching up with her, she needed to go into extended care.
Mm.
And so that even though she was on the lease, I was on the lease, and there was other family on the lease, but with only two of us paying the rent. But with her in extended care, and it was kind of taking that money away from it, and the job that I had was not enough to cover the rent, and I was the only one physically present with income, so that we weren't able to keep up with the rent, so we had to leave, me and my brother. And again, my mom did have a place to stay because she was in care, so she was taken care of.
Right.
But it was me and my brother that now had to find something else to do.
Well, what was it like, the day you have to go out on the streets and sort of fend for yourself? How difficult was that for you to navigate?
It was kind of scary.
I bet it was kind of scary.
Yeah. As it turns out, I was diagnosed a little bit with some social anxiety. I am autistic, so I'm not good with new situations. And so for me going into what was a really big new situation, even though I had my brother with me, we were family, we knew each other, still not knowing what was going to come up next was part of what was going through my head was, oh my God, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next?
Mm-hmm.
What do I do? What do I do?
Right. How did you navigate that? I mean, what did you do?
Now, already knew that there was the locations like the City Union Mission.
I was going to ask you, that's where you turn for help, right?
Yes. And so already knew that location was available. So the day that we ended up leaving, ended up taking a bus because I didn't have a car. I did have a driver's license, but I didn't have a car. So we took a bus down to the City Union Mission, checked in, and started to see maybe how could they help us out.
Mm-hmm.
And
so unlike Monique, you reached out for help right away.
Yeah.
You knew a place to go to get that help.
But that was more because I had been told, in the nature of things, you have conversations with people, things come up, information comes up, and it sticks. If it sticks, if something happens, you can think, oh, maybe I could go to here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did not know about Hope Faith. I learned about that later, but I did know about the mission.
How helpful was the mission for you at that point?
As a place to stay overnight, it was great to have. And they did provide bedding, food, a place to take a shower, and I did meet friends there too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But at some point, if I understand correctly, there came a time when you no longer could stay at the mission. Why was that?
Now, part of it is they have case managers there that you're expected to meet with every so often to see to check on your progress on seeing how well you're doing on trying to get your own place, get a job in case you don't already have one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was approaching a year that I had been there. In late 2019, this was approaching November of 2020.
Right.
And they were feeling that I was not making enough progress in trying to find a place of my own.
Mm-hmm. And that's when you found yourself outside in the elements.
Yes.
So you went into the winter of 2020, November, you said that you had to start fending for yourself.
Yes.
Tell me about that. How difficult was that?
Now, I was fortunate enough that I had met a few people that I could consider friends at the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And situation, they also happened to be expected to leave at around the same time. And there was a location, not quite an open field, but there was a location that we knew about nearby that we could maybe consider, you could call it camping there.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew how to build a shelter out of certain supplies. So we had a location, we could block out the wind, we could block out some of the worst weather, the rain and so on. And so we stayed there. We started staying there.
How effective was it at keeping out the cold?
It was actually, for what it was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't exactly like it was more like a one-room shack. It wasn't like we were building our own house.
Mm-hmm.
But it keep out most of the wind except for what was coming in through the cracks. We had a blanket that we could use for something of a doorway.
Mm-hmm.
And it would keep the rain off. We had tarps.
Were you worried about the safety aspect? You're building fires, I'm sure, out there, and how tricky was that?
Yeah, for the fire, because of where we were, we had what would become a dirt floor and built a pit that we could put wood into that was gathered from nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And we would start the fire, and the fire would be effectively indoors with us. So we would have to worry about the smoke and in case it got too big.
Yeah, yeah.
But now I'm not a camper guy by nature, but my friends were. So they were pretty good with knowing what to do, how to build a fire, how to keep an eye on it so it wouldn't get too big and burn the shelter down.
But still, it sounds like a rough way to live a life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Monique, let me turn back to you. At some point, you did end up in the city shelter system. Adjust easily and begin to stabilize yourself, or how did that work for you?
No, I wasn't. I was bounced around a lot. I was thrown out of some places for behaviors. I wasn't violent, but I was, traumatized and confused, and I talked a lot, and so it took me a while until I got a Save Inc. voucher, and then I got a home, and but then they boarded that one up, and I went to an abandoned house right around the corner.
Yeah. And at some point, you were actually panhandling out on the street.
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
What did you learn from that experience? How generous were Kansas Cityans to you when you were out there?
There were more people that were very giving than there were that were not. But there were times where I was invisible. I would just be asking for the time, or just saying a smile. And a lot of people just look straight.
Yeah, right. Well, you both now are in stable housing. Was there an organization that helped you get back on your feet?
Yes, yeah.
What was it?
Truman Medical Center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are phenomenal. They have helped me in this journey in a way that I can't even begin to explain.
Jeffrey, how about you?
Yeah, I ended up getting help through a group called Save Inc. And I ended up staying at a different shelter, and when I was there, I ended up with help reaching out to Save Inc., and they got me a voucher, and within about 3 months, I ended up with my own apartment.
Oh, good for you. I'm just wondering, during this recent cold snap, when it got so brutally cold, what was going through your mind?
Actually, I was tying it in with a job that I used to work at where I'd have to work outdoors, which I don't have to do anymore. I was thinking, oh, wow, I am so glad that I have a place to be.
Yeah.
That I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Monique, how about you?
I feel the exact same way. I have a key to my own home. I have heat that works. I have blankets. I have a very comfortable bed, running water. When you don't have those utilities and when you receive them again, it's just, it's a miracle, you know?
I bet you don't take those things for granted as much anymore, right?
No.
Yeah.
Small things, toilet paper, a toothbrush, paper towels, dog food. That was a big part of my panhandling. I would have dogs with me.
Yeah. Well, what a journey you've been on, and you've come out the other side, it sounds like. Good for you.
Thank you very much.
You must be feeling really good about that.
I am, yes.
Jeffrey, how about you?
I am glad that I had the help that I received over the years, actually. Yeah. And I'm glad I met some of the friends that I did meet.
I bet. Well, thank you both for coming in and sharing your stories with us. I think a lot of people benefited from it. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Glitchman, again, she's an intern at Relentless Pursuit Outreach and Recovery, homeless for about 4 years. Jeffrey Dungan, employee now with Restart. He experienced homelessness from roughly 2019 to last year. Again, thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After a short break, we're going to come back and meet Victor Diaz. He's a Park University grad student who's competing in this year's prestigious Sphinx competition in Detroit. And we'll also find out more about a program called Great Jobs KC. I'm Steve Kraske, and you're listening to Up to Date on KCUR 89.3. We'll be right back.